Good evening, all, and welcome to Kyle Corner for this week's What You Playing Wednesday, the slightly delayed edition. I am Lord Calberto Geiler, companion of the Meridian Cross, companion of the Argent Comet, companion of the Argent Lamp, companion of the Falcon's Faith, and Reaper. Coming to you live, as always, from the Barony of the Osprey on the southern coast of Meridiace. Now, I'd like to apologize for those who tuned in earlier. We had a bit of a snafu, and I'm going to do it again. Time zones. Time zones is the bane of my existence. This time was not me. But the tech who usually runs peering at the Outlands looked at my spreadsheet, which is listed in Central Standard Time, and Outlands is in Mountain Standard Time. So they were an hour late getting to the show. So I had to jump in and handle that. That is one of the unfortunate parts about having so many things going on through KK Productions is there's a lot going on. Especially tonight, we had 4 different live streams that all started at 8 o'clock Central Standard Time. So that's awesome. I'm so happy we have so much content going out. But, you know, sometimes we have to... Producers have to produce, so I had to go handle that. But we're here now, and so honestly, this is weird. I'm by myself. Usually, I have a guest on for these shows, but for this one, I wanted to change it up a little bit, give you guys a little different format, and do a bit of a deep dive. So this class, this topic, 12 Men's Morris, was suggested by my good friend Catherine Throckmorton from Aidenvelt, longtime watcher. She came on. She did the Ludus Lentrinculum games with me, I don't know, a couple months ago. And when I saw it pop up, I was like, oh, yeah, I should do 12 Men's Morris. But in the back of my head, I went, no, Cal, you shouldn't. There's a reason you haven't done that previously. There's a reason you ignored that game. But I didn't think about it. So I committed. I said, I'll do it. And then I remembered why I wasn't going to do 12 Men's Morris. And here's why. So 12 Men's Morris is a bit of a weird conspiracy theory that I didn't realize existed until I started diving into it. So I'm going to go through some information here. If you're watching this, thank you for tuning in late. And please throw stuff in the comments. Let me know you're watching. And just let me know your thoughts on this. I have some theories about what's happened. But to the information. So first of all, I'm going to reference Alphonso's Book of Games. Alphonso X, so he was the king of Castile, King Leon. And basically he wrote a book, or rather compiled a book of various games from all across the Middle East and in Europe, in Spain. These games were all written by him and his scribes, or were transcribed by him and his scribes. And some of them are really well documented. Some of them are sort of lacking information. But here's what we see for 12 Men's Morris. So this is a 12 Men's Morris, a game of 12 Men's Morris being played by 2 gentlemen with 2 men with bows looking on. I'm not sure why they have to be armed for this game, but of course, I guess they do. Now, anybody who's watched any of the previous episodes or is familiar with 9 Men's Morris is going to look at this game and go, this is really weird looking. And you're right. You're absolutely correct. But let me read a little bit about what Alfonso says about this game. So first of all, he spends a good 2 paragraphs just waxing philosophic about chess. Alfonso has a obsession with chess. I personally am not a chess fan. I think it is a game that is just too hard to learn and be good at. But he is a big fan. But as he gets through it, he talks about this game. Some of the actual rules he provides are: it is played in this manner. On the mill board, there are to be 25 places where the pieces can be placed, and there are to be 24 pieces. And they put 12 of one color on one side and the other 12 on the other in a troop formation. And one place remains in the center to allow play. And the one who plays first has a disadvantage because he is forced to play in the empty space. So Alfonso goes on to state, the other player moves his piece to the space, and the first left empty and captures the one that was first to move. That player captures the second player's piece by jumping over it from one space to another, according to the straight lines on the board, and so on and so forth. Basically, it becomes a jumping game like checkers. Okay. And the very last thing is, and the one who guards his pieces worse and loses them more quickly loses. So basically, the last person with pieces wins, or the person who loses piece loses. And if both players know how to play, then it should end up in a tie. All right. All of that being said, let's look at the board a little closer. So this is a diagram. This is the simplified version. It's a 5x5 board with the sort of diagonal lines connecting the center points for each of the little 3x3 squares, right? Cool. That does not look like any Nyman's Morris board I've seen. So that's an odd sort of derivation from the traditional Morris games. Being this is 12-man's Morris, you figure it looked similar. And here is the piece allotment. So you have dark pieces on one side, light pieces on the other, with a single space in the middle. Now, this is another deviation from all the other Morris games in that the pieces start on the board as opposed to in hand. So further down in the same manuscript, we see Nyman's Morris in the same section. So this is now 2 sections later, or 2 sort of manuscript points later. We see a game of Nyman's Morris with and without dice, because there is a variation of Nyman's Morris you play with dice, where you the placement is determined by dice rolling. It's a goofy way to play the game. I do not suggest it. I've done it. It's not. It's overly complicated for no reason. I wouldn't suggest it. But you'll notice this board and the previous ones do not look similar at all. Also, this is sort of a bit on a side. I think it's funny that the version with dice is being played by adults and the version without dice is being played by children. To me, this is implying that the without dice version is more of a child's game, whereas the with dice version is more of an adult game, which I would think would be the exact opposite until you do sort of gambling mechanic potentially, and that would be why it's played by adults. But that's a sort of an aside for another day. All right, so that's what the Nyman's Morris boards look like. So if we go back to the 12-man's Morris, Nyman's Morris. Weird. Here they are side by side. So a game by any other name. All right, so we have 12-man, 9-man, and 3-man Morris, also mentioned in Alphonso's manuscript. Or we have Alkirk, Merrill's, and Tic-Tac-Toe. Aha. Now, anybody who's watched this knows I've been avoiding the word Alkirk because that's what this is. 12-man's Morris is Alkirk. So it's a game we've covered here on the channel, and it's a game that we've played before that it's fairly common. And it's fairly common in the SCA to see Alkirk played. And it uses the Alphonso manuscript that looks like that. Anywhere, if you search Alkirk online in Wikipedia, any of the Alkirk sort of instructionals from like Signing Stand, you'll find this picture at the top of it, which we saw from earlier is listed as 12-man's Morris in Alphonso. So let's look at the rules for Alkirk real quick. And then we'll go back to sort of doing some board comparisons. So the rules of the game are subject to controversy because the rules left by Alphonso, so even other people are referencing Alphonso's book, are ambiguous. But basically, the rules of Alkirk boil down to it's a board of 5 points by 5, with the points being joined by horizontal and vertical lines in a lattice pattern. Sure, that tracks. The game begins with 24 pieces divided between the 2 players, 12 black, 12 white. And they're laid out on the board as illustrated. So as we see, the piece can be moved from its starting point along any marked line to any adjacent point, and the first player has a slight disadvantage. And the piece is captured when it's jumped over. Sure, that sounds like 12-man's Morris from what we read earlier. And they clarify a few things in their rule sets, just like Bell does in his reference or any other books. But yeah, so it's the same game. And I remembered this is why I never touched 12-man's Morris, because when I looked at Alphonso's manuscript, this didn't track and it didn't make sense to me. So the other night I was looking into this and I felt like I'm sure everybody's seen the internet meme of the guy with all the sticky notes in the lines on the wall with the hair sticking up. That's what I felt like, trying to figure out why this didn't make sense. So I did some searching and I found, so if you search 12-man's Morris, you'll find the board that's listed here on the right, which looks like a 9-man's Morris board, except with the diagonal lines added. And if you search for Alkirk, you'll find the board on the left, which is the board we see as an Alkirk board, or the board that's actually a 12-man's Morris board in Alphonso's manuscript. Now, if I was looking for 12-man's Morris, I would be looking for the board on the right. That makes more sense as a 12-man's Morris game. And it is played like 9-man's Morris, except with 12 pieces instead of 9. Same play style, same objective, same win condition. It makes way more sense. So where did Alphonso screw up? Because that's the only thing I can think of. Something that got messed up. And then I dug a little further. So if you read down in Alphonso's manuscript to the Three Man Morris section, it says, and once again we have a game of Alkirk of 3. And I went, aha, I see the word Alkirk now. I have a connection. So I searched the rest of the manuscript, and there is no other reference to Alkirk in the entirety of the manuscript, except in the Three Men Morris section. So I'm going to go back real quick and look at that Three Men Morris board. So if you look at that Three Men Morris board and transpose it onto the Alkirk board, the 12 Men Morris board, it's the same. Essentially, the 12 Men Morris board is just 4 of the 9 men's or the 3 Men Morris boards. Okay, so we're getting somewhere. Also, anybody who's ever played Fox and Geese will recognize that board from that as well. It's the same layout except in a cross pattern as opposed to 4 in a row or 4 in a cube or a square like that. Now, in line with the Morse games in Alphonso's manuscripts, there's also a game called Corner the Rabbit, which, other than the fact that it's played on the 12 Men's Morris board, or the Alkirk board in this case, it is Fox and Geese. But it's listed in Alkirk, or in the 12 Men's Morris section, in the Morris game section, because it's using the same board. And I was like, all right, I'm seeing things here. But but where did Alkirk come from? So the word Alkirk comes from, actually comes from the Book of Songs from the 10th century. And it came from the book of, so it's 10th century, and Alphonso wrote his thing in the 12th, 13th century, or yeah, 11th, 12th century. So Alkirk, the word came around before that, Alkirk or Kirkot. But how did it get into the usage for 12 Men's Morris? So if you look up Alkirk in Spanish, Alkirk translates to, and I'm trusting that this is correct. I do not speak Spanish, so please, if you speak Spanish out there, let me know if this is right or not. But I verified a couple places. I think this is correct. But it's another name for a bruised olive pile at an oil mill. Mill being the key word here. Alkirk in Spanish equals mills. Aha. So mills or merrills is another name for Morris games because it's a row. Mills is a row of 3. So my thoughts are this. Was it a transcription error? Did one of the scribes just, miswrite something? We've seen it happen. It's a typo, right? Literally, is this a typo? Is it something that's been lost in translation? Is this because they saw the word Alkirk in this writing and went, oh, cool, it's another one of these mill games we've got over here, because they had the word Alkirk for mills games, for the Morris games, and filed the game Alkirk in with the mills games and called it 12 Men's Morris because there were 12 pieces. Or is it literally just a scribe misfiling it? Did they just stack these in order and went, should these go together? Because they looked the same, or because they had a number of pieces. I don't know. So that's the conspiracy theory. And this is a weird thing, right? So I don't know which I believe. My biggest, the point that I'm looking at is it's got to be a lost in translation thing. That's the one I track the most, because it literally looks like they would have read that. Like I can only think of me sitting there as a scribe, down in the deep dungeon scribes hang out in, because scribes hang out in dungeons apparently. They saw this written in some other language, and they're having to play translation between Arabic to Spanish, or Arabic to Castilian, actually, which is a whole different form of Spanish. And then they mistranslated or just didn't translate it because they saw a word they recognized and didn't bother translating it. And then we have since translated it to English and just maintained, oh, look, Alkirk, cool, 12 Men's Morris. It's the same game. Because we were literally translating the words. Which that doesn't then track, because the word Alkirk still appears in in the manuscript as a separate word, but it literally is in the place of the word where mills should be as a word. Yes. So yeah. So as I mentioned, yeah. So the 12 Morse board is 4 of the 3 Morse boards moshed together, and same thing with fox and geese. The fox and geese board would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them in a cross pattern. It's the same board layouts, which means, as far as I'm concerned, those boards can go together. I'm good with that. But you can't play a traditional Morris style game on that board. Now, while I was sitting here earlier pondering on a few things, I went, oh, let's see what Bell has to say. R.C. Bell, being the god of board games. We're gonna ask, am I the Sean Dawson of board games? I don't know who Sean Dawson is, but if he's the Mind Boy guy, then yes, then I'm the Sean Dawson of board games. Okay, so I looked up what Bell had to say about these games. So first of all, in chapter 2 of his 2nd edition, Bell has an entire section of games called the Alkirk Group. And he has listed this Alkirk Group because of the board style. So basically it uses that. Let me get back to the right slide here. Give me a second. So all of the games in the Alkirk style use this style of layout. So it's always a board with pieces on either side with a dot in the middle that's open, right? No matter what the sizes are. And it's played in a similar fashion to checkers, where it's a jumping mechanic. He lists multiple games in that Alkirk group, right? Which tracks, because it's, if they're playing from the game reference in the Book of Songs, it was that Alkirk game, the game that I'm going to call Alkirk from now on. That's an Alkirk game, right? The game that uses 2 troop formations with a hole in the middle. That's Alkirk, okay? If you move on to his Morris game, so in the first book, he has 3, 6, and 9 men's Morris, like you'd expect. He does not mention 12 men's Morris. In the second one, there is a reference to a 5 in a row game called Mulinello Quadrupolo that was described in the 1900s, give or take. And there was some doubt if it was ever played, but it uses, you guessed it, the Alkirk board. So if Morris games are 3 in a row, or mill games, because the board is a 3x3, what would you play on a 5x5 board? A 5 in a row game. So I think that's where the somehow the confusion happened sort of later in period stuff, is that translation then caused us to use that board for wrong games, so on and so forth. Yep, that's what I got. So this is going to be a short episode tonight, guys. I just this bugged me, and thank you, Catherine, for putting this little bee in my bonnet. This is I literally have been taking notes to do this, and this is probably going to end up turning into like some conspiracy theory research paper. I'm going to dig a little deeper, try to find some more proof of this. But yeah, so as far as how to play this game, go back and look at the Alkirk video. I'll link that above for those watching later. I'll try to link that. I don't know how to link things. I'm not a YouTube guy. I do this. I don't do this for a living. So I'll link that up there. Or if you want to know how to play 9 men's Morris, I'll link it up there. What I would suggest to you, the viewers, is if you're going to play Alkirk and you're going to play the game that looks like this, call it Alkirk. Play Alkirk. That is Alkirk. If you're going to play, if you want to play 12 men's Morris, cool. Play 12 men's Morris, but do it on that board, right? Using 9 men's Morris rules, except with 12 pieces, play 12 men's Morris on that board. That's what I would suggest. Now, so a bit of a clarification for rules on that. There is one caveat you have to add to your rules when you're playing 12 men's Morris on that board. There are only 24 spaces because you're missing the extra space in the middle. You will have to, if a mill is not made in the first phase, when you're the placement phase, then the game is a draw. So somebody will have to make a mill in that first phase to then leave a space open so somebody can move. So yeah, try that out. I haven't actually played 12 Minutes Morris on that board. So try it out, look it up. There's a whole bunch of you can Google 12 Minutes Morris and you'll find like free play versions of it or ways you can play it online. So do that. Let me know what you think in the comments below later, or in the in the chat, whatever. Yeah, in the comments later, because you're in the chat now. The comments will be later. So let me know what you think. I'll be curious to see what you thought of this, my theories here, and sort of what you think of 12 Minutes Morris. Also, I wouldn't hate seeing, maybe it's something I'll do as an experiment, try playing 12 Minutes Morris using the Morris rules on an Alkirk board and see how that differs. So basically, you'll be playing Alkirk, but with placing the pieces instead of placing them in a predetermined starting point. Might be interesting too. Remember out there, as you're playing these games, always talk to your opponent and make sure you agree on the rules you use. But if you don't like the rules that I give you or Smelts gives you, make them up. These games are for you to play and have fun with. You do not have to follow any rule set you don't want or don't like. Just because Alphonso the Wise told you it was right doesn't mean it always is. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Again, I apologize for the late start, but thank you for those of you who had stuck with me. Yeah, so ask some more questions. Give me some more suggestions in the comments. I actually, if you have another weird conspiracy theory like this, you want to see me do a little video on, let me know. And maybe Gluckhouse will be my next one, and why the Gluckhouse boards are all wrong. So, anyways, guys, I appreciate you tuning in. This has been Cal Barter in Cal Barter's Corner. Good night, everybody.